My fellow Americans.
Take the red pill.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
The disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
All we have built, all we have worked for, would be destroyed.
There is nothing the political establishment will not do.
And this nation will not be fully free until all its citizens are free.
Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action.
These criminals cannot be rewarded.
So that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
The cost of freedom is always high.
Those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
This is a crusade! This is a holy war against the deep state!
We never wanted to be right, but yet things are all adding up to the firestorm.
America is a land of heroes, a place where greatness is born, where destinies are forged, and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals, including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. This is the country where children learn names like Wyatt Earp, Davy Crockett, and Annie Oakley. This is the place where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth and where Texas patriots made their last stand at the Alamo. The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers. Our ancestors built the most exceptional republic ever to exist in all of human history, and we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans. We are pioneers. We are the pathfinders. We settled the new world. We built the modern world, and we change history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young. The sun is still rising. God's grace is still shining. And my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose. We are live with you Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is where we bring you that unfolding global conspiracy, and a conspiracy it absolutely is. One of my favorite videos there, that is The Best Is Yet to Come, that was produced by Joe M. shortly after Donald Trump's State of the Union speech back in, I think, 2018. And man, I mean, we look at that now and we see the relevance of what he's saying, that we all want to get back to that America. We want to get back to that foundation which built this country. And, you know, for the longest time, I've been talking specifically about community organization, been talking about getting back that moral and ethical framework of which built America. If you have a strong family structure, that strong family structure then extends out into the community. A strong community builds those counties, builds those strong cities build the state, and then that's reflected within your federal government, because those are the people who are voting and putting those politicians in the office. And so it's not necessarily a moral dilemma that we have in this country, but we've been systematically beat down in the sense of culture in this country. And I'll tell you, there's no better guest in the world to come on and talk to me about all of this than Mel K. If you guys have never seen Mel K or heard Mel K, I'm sure you have. She's phenomenal. I've known her for years. Incredible human being, a absolute patriot, someone who is a staunch supporter of the Constitution, an investigative journalist out there uncovering the truth, just like we are here. So I'm going to bring in Mel K.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I got all worked up watching your video. I haven't seen that in a long time.
It gets me teary-eyed every time I see it.
Me too. I mean, we are in such a bizarre time. You know, it's funny in your intro, it's like so many people kind of know what's happening, but don't really see the real stakes that we're facing, and that this is a turning point in history, not just for America, but the world. So I'm hoping everyone is keeping their energy up and not being demoralized by the social media chaos or the mainstream intel news, and, you know, really keeping their eyes on what really matters.
I agree, and it's hard to keep the morals up because I'm the bearer of doom and gloom. I look at I look at it in the sense, Mel, that we have to be prepared for the worst and we have to hope and pray for the best.
Exactly.
And we're coming in the November 5th right now, and this is, I've been talking about this. This is probably one of the most critical points in American history. I mean, this is that turning point that we've been waiting for a very long time. And I mean, over the course of the last year, how many conspiracy theories have we found out to be absolutely true that we've been talking about for years? We were deleted from social media because of all of this.
Back in the day. Yeah, we were the early purge.
Yeah, we were. And you know, it's all coming to a head right now. And it's amazing in one sense, but then there's a lot of fear out there amongst the people.
Yeah.
And I think that what people really need is they need a plan. They need a guidebook. They need something to help them kind of get America back on track, because ultimately Donald Trump can only do so much. That's up to us. That's what MAGA is. We're here to make America great again.
Yeah. I mean, it's 100% up to us. As you know, I have a new book out. I worked on it for 2 years. It's called Americans Anonymous, Restoring Power to the People, One Citizen at a Time. Because the harder part here is that a lot of people don't fully understand who the enemy is. I've always felt that, you know, that we have to kind of define what's happened to this nation. I fully believe that our country's been captured. I think that the coup happened with the murder of JFK in '63, and everything since then has been a cover-up or the promotion of people that were involved in cover-ups, putting to the next level, and just this deep state that has gone on and on to become basically a mafia of made men that have been involved in one thing or another. And the only way to move up in the current situation we have is to be involved in this, I believe, global public-private partnership that has captured our nation. I think that there's a group of billionaire oligarchs that are much more focused on globalism than they are on anything else, let alone humanity, but America even. And And at the same time, they run our country like they're the parent company, and like we're just lucky to live here. I feel that they've captured the three other branches of government that were supposed to be in control. They created post the unconstitutional Patriot Act after the PNAC document and then 9/11. Basically, the Patriot Act ended privacy and many of the things that protected us from the government under the guise of a tactic known as terror. It was quickly, configured to be anyone ideologically opposed to this globalist movement that Barack Obama kind of ushered in. And then he signed us on to Agenda 2030 in 2015 without telling the American people that those were 17 sustainable goals for the billionaire oligarch class to keep their power for another 100 years as their financial system was about to break. And basically, people like Larry Fink, Eric Schmidt, Bill Gates, Soros, all the way, all the usual suspects that are aligned with the World Economic Forum and fund all the globalist NGOs. These people are done with America. Donald Trump says they're not after me, they're after you, and I'm in the way. Obviously true, but a bigger picture, and I think the American people need to understand this, is that they're not after America. They're after the world, and America is in the way. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, our founding, our DNA to fight bullies and tyranny is a problem, because Agenda 2030 and this full track and trace surveillance totalitarian technocracy that it entails cannot work without the participation of the United States of America. And this is all about the global public infrastructure. Obviously, Trump pulled out of a lot of the globalist stuff. Biden's first 30 executive orders put them all back in play. Boom, here we go. If they can get us on the global digital infrastructure that is funded by the World Economic Forum and their partners and Gates and CCP, then they win. And if they lose America onto this digital technocrat, totalitarian track and trace surveillance system, we will never get back freedom. And that's why it's very hard. People are pointing at the Jews, or they're pointing at the Chinese, or they're pointing at, North Korea, or they're pointing. The truth is, this group of people has no allegiance or alliance with any nation, any religion, any flag, any land, any culture. No, they are power for power's sake only. And a lot of it is hereditary, generations of wealth of people that truly believe that they are the super class and that their problem is solving humanity. And thank God for the COVID, because quite honestly, it pulled the curtain back. Everyone got to see it. The lie that the one world government was a conspiracy theory, it was fully exposed in lockstep. And we have to go back. And it's hard for people to admit that maybe both Bushes, Clinton, Obama, and Biden have all been in on the same plan that was concocted by Rockefeller, Kissinger, and Brzezinski a long time ago with the Crown. And we are in the end game. And they've never been so close, and they've never been so far. And it is because of people like me and you that have put our butts out there, and your audience that's awesome, and my audience, and speaking to everyone and not being afraid. But, they're caged animals right now. Many of them belong in prison, especially the people involved in Crossfire Hurricane, and everything happened after that. So, we're fighting an enemy that is fighting for their lives and their survival. And they've invested trillions of dollars in their long game plan. And now that people don't want to go along with it, what they have to lose is far more significant than it even was in 2020.
Boom. That about wraps it up, guys. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And you just laid it out perfectly, because you're absolutely right. These people have zero allegiance whatsoever to any country, to any nation, to any religion, any creed, any sect. They are them.
Yeah.
I call this the multi-headed Hydra.
Right.
So you have multiple heads of the Hydra. Each head has its own ideology. It has its own belief system, but they all operate together to kind of unfold the world into their own stage.
Yeah.
And right now we have various different factions that are aligning left and right. And
Right.
the interesting thing is that we have factions that are aligning around Donald Trump.
Yes.
You got the Silicon Valley big boys. You got a lot of international support from world leaders, a lot of the BRICS nations.
Yep.
And so this is interesting because on I think it was July 16th, the attempted Trump assassination, right? This was meant to take out Donald Trump. It was meant to kill Donald Trump for everybody. Right. And one of the things that I pointed out to everybody that nobody was talking about is I said, whoever made that decision, whoever made that call the week prior, 2 weeks prior, or put that operation into play, they were fully ready for the consequences of
Yes.
doing that, which means that next week they were ready for civil war. They were ready for civil unrest, which is something that we really need to understand here with everything that's coming about now, because yeah, they missed their shot heard around the world, but it doesn't mean that they're going to stop there.
No. And I think what you're saying is so important, because a lot of people don't want to believe in evil, true evil. And a big part, you're friendly with Kathy O'Brien. She's one of my best friends. And we always talk about that they use these big trauma events like the murder of JFK, God forbid the murder of Trump, to then push in whatever they want next. Like after 9/11, they pushed in the Patriot Act, which was written before 9/11. And in the PNAC document that came before 9/11 as well, it said we need a Pearl Harbor to get the American people to go along with this plan, which is ending right now. But that was the thing that bothered me the most about it, was not only did I know that it was planned and that they expected him to die that day, but they also expected to throw the world into mourning and chaos and disarray for their own gain, because it's not like you said before. Trump has 4 years. The best Trump can do is throw sand in the gears of the global governance, fourth industrial revolution, great reset, all of that. But at the same time, I keep saying to people, which is why I wrote Americans Anonymous, is that the truth is, it's not Donald Trump that is ready to go the day Donald Trump wins. It better be us, because the swamp is in your backyard. The swamp in DC is corrupt to the core. There is no saving. A lot of the agencies have got to go. We see what's very obvious there. Lobbying should be illegal. NGOs should not be nonprofits. There's just many things we can do to dismantle that. But the truth is, 20 years ago plus, they started infiltrating towns and counties and states all over this country. And that's why we, the people, are the problem, but we're also the solution. And in my mind, I don't need Jim Jordan and all these people doing a 2-year weaponization oversight hearing when all the evidence is clear. And it's like, we, the people, have to start being the oversight team, the oversight group. I actually talk about my book, having Freedom Watch groups or Americans Anonymous groups in your community, in your neighborhood, where you're looking at the contracts, how these people are spending tax money, who's getting no bid deals, who's getting the data from the smart meters they're forcing you to put in, God knows why. Like what other surveillance is being put in locally for sustainable development, and all this other stuff, even some of these things that came out of some of these unconstitutional executive orders, like the Justice 40 agenda, like what's that? That's equity and environmental justice, whatever that means, or any of these other things, DEI, CRT, who's getting invited into your schools to do the curriculum. Like, that's our job. These people work for us, but we have, like you said, over many, many years been lulled into this kind of learned helplessness when it comes to the government, when we just kind of look at the government like, okay, well, they suck or they're corrupt or whatever. But a lot of people, it stops right there. Our lives are busy by design, debt slavery by design. I spent 22 years in Hollywood, a lot of propaganda, predictive programming, manipulation, especially in video games, which parents should watch out for. But it's all been designed to kind of walk us slowly without seeing it to the end of the plank. And if we got on the CBDC, which goes with the digital public infrastructure, which is all part of Agenda 2030, formerly Agenda 21, which is the cataloging and commoditizing all of human resources, all natural resources, all animals, everything, from us to the oceans, all being under the guise of, sustainability or saving the planet. What it's really about is full track and trace surveillance and social credit scores, ESG scores, and that's for who survives after the attacks, the biological attacks. So it's all been working. But the good news is the curtain was pulled back. You have to be willing to not trust yourself, your eyes, your gut, everything that you're seeing, to continue down the path of the destruction of this nation. Basically, we're on a suicide path if we dare vote for a woman who was placed there without votes, who works for basically the parent company that runs America. The number 2 guy is obviously compromised in multiple ways. And above and beyond that, getting out there and calling Trump Hitler and a fascist, and he's going to use the military and weaponize the law. It's like, if you don't know Saul Alinsky at this point, and you don't know how these radicals work, and you don't know about the Weather Underground, you got to start doing your homework, because these are very dangerous people. Many of them are actually elitists. globalists from these poison Ivy League colleges. They don't even think for themselves. They were the most easily brainwashed during COVID, and yet they walk around like they're experts and superior. You know, the superior people are the people that put food on the table, keep a family together, and raise kids that have better lives than their own. And we're losing that if we don't, really not just show up in droves and photograph and take evidence of anything we see cheating, but if we don't stand up and speak up in general, because I think a lot of people that are voting for Trump are still scared to say that they are. And I believe that that is a problem as well.
Well, January 6th really kind of, it turned into a situation that nobody wanted it to turn into. There was mistakes made. But at the end of the day, the persecutions that came afterwards, that is what people are in fear of. Nobody wants to be that first person to stand up and raise their voice November 6th, 2024, or January 20th, 2024, January 6th, 2025. So we have to kind of get past this moral dilemma, I guess I'll say again, is that we have to be revolutionary. We have to be rebels for once in our life. You know, there's a lot of videos out there right now of the left doing multiple different accounts of election fraud and theft. And I thought of it today. I said, this is so funny. I never see any of these videos. I never see any of this content, not even from the left, of the right doing this.
No.
I've never seen anything about Republicans out there committing voter fraud or Republicans doing mail-in ballot fraud or stuffing ballot boxes. It's always the left. And for everybody out there, you know, I'm not saying we're going to go out there and cheat, but if they take this route, November 5th, it's go time. It is truly go time. And I'm not calling for a violent civil war or anything like that. I've always stood the ground on what I call the 10th Amendment Civil War.
Yeah, I agree.
10th Amendment Civil War.
Get rid of it. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and the states rise up and say, hey, federal government, this is bullshit. We're not recognizing federal authority. Goodbye. Have a good day. It starts with Texas, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and it just spans out. And then, this is exactly what Tim Burchett was talking about. Eli Crane and Tim Burchett were on Sean Ryan's podcast. They were just talking about this the other day. It's going to be more like the states just divided and not recognizing federal authority. And I said, bam, that's it. That's the 10th Amendment Civil War. And I think that's a situation we will have in and around January 21st, 2025, because no matter what happens on November 5th, January 6th is one of the top points. We have Kamala, who is the vice president, is going to be overseeing Congress on that day. The Democrats are going to try to invoke the 14th Amendment, Section 3. You know that if they don't do that, they're going to try to say that their ballot boxes were stuffed and there's election fraud. They're going to send it back to the states. They're going to do anything to delay the point of inauguration, which is constitutional and has to happen on that day. So I see a seizure of power coming from these people before January 20th. And that's why I say January 21st is that point in time frame that we need to be ready, because I think Donald Trump has won overwhelmingly. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you look at all the real polls, you look at all the online on the gaming side of the things, the betting side of the things. He is blowing them away. There is no way that they can defeat him. And Kamala is just shooting herself in the foot. So going into this election, if they do attempt to steal it, the only thing I think that they will try to steal is the House of Representatives. That's the only thing that they have a shot, because that brings about January 6th, when that new Congress comes in on January 3rd, and they can use Jamie Raskin's plan to take over and send it back to the states or invoke the 14th Amendment. I hope that they don't do that, because it's going to lead to some shitty situations that are going to rise in 2025. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a globalist agenda. These people, I forgot who it was, but he says, it was my friend Michael Tessarian talks about this, is that they've been at this agenda for thousands and thousands of years. They are incredibly patient, strategic, and efficient, and don't think that they won't wait another 100 years to get their agenda, because they will. And that's the truth. Is they can wait another 4 years. They'll wait another 8 years. But here's the thing, is in the backdrop, it's all going to be continuing. And that's what you're saying. Yeah. Is that we got to look here, our household. You got to look in your school, your kid's school. You got to look in your neighborhoods and say, what's wrong with this community? How can
Right.
we do this better as Americans?
Right. And all the things that we see that are outrageous in DC are happening in your backyard, from lobbying to the UN to the World Economic Forum to the international banking cartel. All of this stuff is happening all over this country. Everyone can be a hero right now. And a couple things you're saying I really love. First is every single state could balance their budget to a place where they don't take money from the federal government. So that if your state isn't doing that, you got to start your own group and have, a pressure campaign of letter writing and showing up and all of that. Also, as far as I'm concerned, every single red governor right now should put it in an executive order down that any individual NGO or nonprofit that helps any individual vote illegally, it's a felony and up to 10 years in prison. And then we would see a real division, but nobody's willing to step out on that line. We have also the secretaries of state, Raffensperger and Benson, and in the usual, the Wisconsin also, and some other states. They're already getting lawyers to fight any requests to audit the elections. And then, of course, we've had the real criminal element, which is the Transition Integrity Project, those behind Crossfire Hurricane and the cover-up Mueller report, and both impeachments, and then the original Transition Integrity Project, where they gamed out how Trump would win and how they could block him. Surprise, surprise, Larry Fink makes his direct speech to the people. Next thing you know, we have COVID, and the rest is history. Well, those same people put themselves back in power in different positions, many of them outside of government at Brookings or Just Security, especially Norm Eisen and Andrew Weissman, Mary McCord Wittes over at Brookings Lawfare. And they went after Trump and all of the lawyers. And don't forget the Bar Association is totally compromised. And that was David Brock also of Media Matters and of Facts First and of 65 Project. I mean, they have weaponized the intelligence community and the lawfare community in such a way, but both of those communities work for the parent company. They have nothing to do with America. They do not care about the people of this country. They don't care if they disgrace our legal system and blow up our institutions. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that they're never held accountable. And frankly, in my opinion, every single person that was in the room with Obama and Comey and Rosenstein and Brennan and Clapper and Biden committed sedition and, as far as I can see, treason. But then they put themselves back in power. We had Bill Barr, a lifelong CIA, DOJ trading back and forth, who totally blocked any investigation into Crossfire Hurricane or the fake impeachments, blocked any investigation into Epstein, blocked any investigation into voter fraud. Then we had Durham come in, who wasn't allowed to look at the criminals inside the government. The criminals are inside the institutions. So if we keep having these bogus things where we have hearings and we have, if you're going after the whole FBI, you're not getting anyone. You need to name the person. We need to name names. They've done it on the other side brilliantly. And yet on our side, we're still like, well, look at that group. And look, there's specific people that need to answer for what's happened to this country. And first and foremost, if you can explain to me how Anthony Fauci and the Department of Defense, working with our supposed worst enemy, the CCP and the Wuhan lab, to create a bioweapon with gain-of-function research isn't treason against the people of the United States and, frankly, the world, I don't know what is. We have Milley telling the Chinese he's going to call them if Trump says anything. I mean, the worst part was that Trump was surrounded by people that he was encouraged to choose that made sure he couldn't do much. And we can't let that happen again. But I'm telling you, the same people that belong in prison since 2016, they are already planning. They've planned a year out. They've gone through all of Trump's speeches, everything he said, a lot of his surrogate stuff, a lot of our stuff, podcasts and stuff. And they have things ready to go. They're going to start with the impeachment and not certifying and one after another. That's why the 12 criminal referrals that Devin Nunes and Cash had given to Bill Barr should be executed within days of Trump taking office, because it is those people that need to be held accountable. And particularly, in my opinion, Hillary Clinton needs to be held accountable on the highest level, not just for everything that people know about, but for Uranium One, for Russiagate, for all these different things. And it's just disgusting to watch Bill Clinton out there when he traveled to Epstein's Island 27 times, getting a standing ovation from the party of women. Let me tell you something. I have journalists overseas because they're playing Kamala's ads overseas, if people don't know that. And why would they do that? But overseas, people are like, what is wrong with America? Their entire election is based on not unfettered abortion, because that's what all our ads look like. When the rest of the world knows that they're pushing us to World War III, that could be nuclear. The BRICS nations are moving forward with or without us. And frankly, our border's wide open. Our inner cities are in turmoil. We still haven't had any accountability from COVID. And the left is all obsessed with unfettered abortion as their only issue. And the rest of the world is looking at us and thinking, God, maybe Putin was right. They're run by a bunch of bloodthirsty Satanists. But that is what it looks like. And I think that the plan is from inside. And the worst of the worst are the National Endowment for Democracy and the USAID. You think $200 billion to Ukraine is bad? We need to audit those agencies and find out how many puppet leaders around the world have betrayed their people because the central banks that control Wall Street, City of London, and DC are running the world for their own gain to keep everyone developing and struggling. It's just, it's all going to come to a head. But again, we have to stand up, speak up, show up. That everywhere locally, you have power. It's not true that we don't have power. We just need to show up. And showing up is the big part.
I 100% agree. And I think that as much as a lot of people in the world cringe at what I'm about to say, I think that there's a lot of truth in this. Now, I will be the first person to tell people out there that every nation on this planet is a terrorist organization, especially the United States. And Putin is not a good guy, and Xi Jinping is not a good guy. But here's the thing: is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin both know that if the globalists get their way, their technocratic, commie, authoritarian state, that China will no longer be free, that Xi Jinping will lose power, that Russia, Putin will lose power. All of the crown prince of Saudi Arabia will lose power. They will lose their resources. Right now, what we're seeing is an expansion of a resource war that is happening across the globe. This is one of the primary reasons why Russia is going into Ukraine. Eastern Europe is rich in rare earth minerals and natural gases and energy production. And China is hampering up right now. Taiwan, the top chip manufacturing country in the world, they control the Straits of Taiwan, which is one of the largest shipping and trafficking points in the world. When we look at these countries, they understand that the globalists win this war. They're done. And here's the thing: is they were a part of it for a long time. They were players and puppets in that war. But I think that somebody convinced them to say, hey, take this little thing that you have here, the BRICS, that the World Economic Forum wants you to rise up into the new Silk Road, 2019 World Economic Forum article. Take it, and this is what I want you to do. I want you to go into all those third world countries that the Western nations have exploited for resources for the last 75 years. I want you to go in there and undermine the U.S. intelligence agencies. And what you do is you go in there and you offer them money and loans to rebuild their infrastructure, to rebuild their roads, to rebuild up education, and you fund good politicians that will rise those people up. And then what you do is you allow them to start different types of trade, like agriculture, and you allow all of this to build up. And guess what? Those countries, they will leave the dominance of the Western nations, because the only dominance that the Western nations had over them was the influence of the U.S. dollar. And once the U.S. dollar had no power over them, they could get around U.S. sanctions. It was easy to join the BRICS nations and become part of this massive economic and now military alliance. And I mean, everything is heating up in Eastern Europe and Middle East. I've been talking about, I called this shit 2 years ago, Mel. I said, watch Turkey. Everybody, with everything that's going on in the Middle East and Europe, Eastern Europe, I said, watch Turkey. Firstly, Turkey didn't want Norway and Sweden to join NATO. They called Sweden a terrorist organization. They did not support the proxy war in Ukraine. Joe Biden gave them 20 F-16s to shut them up in the vote for Sweden. Erdogan, we know, was probably one of the key figures in reason why Donald Trump won the 2016 election. Conversation for a different day. Turkey plays a major role in collaboration with Eastern Europe and the Middle East. He's good friends with Vladimir Putin. What did we find out? So did you see this a few weeks ago? U.S. Navy sailors in Turkey get kidnapped. Did you see this? They were like, Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that was completely bullshit. That was not U.S. Navy sailors. You have mustache guy, right?
Right,
He's got a
yeah.
girl holding onto his wrist. He's got a guy not even hold on to him. He's like this going, help. You have the guy that runs into the crowd. That was a psyop produced by U.S. intelligence.
Yeah.
Why? They were trying to spark some type of color revolution, like an Arab Spring in Turkey, because the next day, exactly what you had, thousands upon thousands of people in Turkey rise up. But Erdogan goes out there and announces BRICS membership.
Right.
The next day, President Assisi comes in from Egypt and they say, we're forming the Islamic Alliance and we're going to stop all the violence in the Middle East. What does that mean? Specifically, what this means that if Turkey joins the BRICS alliance, you're going to have problems within NATO. The largest European military in NATO is Turkey. The largest ally that NATO has in the Middle East and Northern Africa is Egypt. You lose those two, NATO begins to crumble, and they're about to lose Turkey from NATO. And NATO and Turkey and Egypt, along with multiple other nations in the Middle East, are about to intervene with what's happening in Gaza and in Lebanon. Not only that, Iran just announced that they're headed towards war. They're getting buckling up and ready for war. So it looks like this potentially could even go out. Now, I don't even want to look at the globalist plot of how expansive this actually becomes, but the BRICS nations I look at as kind of a methodology that is being set up for what's to come next after this Western power structure is dismantled. This Marxist power structure is dismantled. And I always called it that you have this techno-fascist, commune-fascist New World Order, the Western New World Order. And then on the other side, what you have is you have this national sovereignty New World Order. The national is where these countries, hey, you retain your constitution, you retain your national sovereignty. Let's work together. Let's form a new League of Nations. Let's talk about how to progress humanity into the future. And I think that that's what everybody wants. I'm not saying BRICS is all good and all great and let's eat ice cream. I'm just saying that we have to look at alternative solutions other than the Western New World Order. But these people, these Satanists, these evil motherfuckers, they are hell-bent on it, and they will scorch this earth before they ever give up power.
Right. And I think that it has a lot to do with that. It's also gold backed, the BRICS currency that they want to introduce, because obviously what we've done in our country, the original coup is actually, to me, the Federal Reserve and the private bank. A lot of people don't even realize that our 12 governors from our Federal Reserve go to the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland every 2 months or so for private closed door meetings. Also, the Bank of International Settlements, where I believe everything leads to, has paid for both sides of every war. It is completely opaque. It has similar rules about this bank that looks like the Tower of Babel that the Vatican has. It has full immunity, total opaque numbers. Nobody's ever been able to look at it. I believe it's being paid. It's actually financed both sides of every war that has benefited the globalists. And frankly, we have to start looking at all our lives. We were told Switzerland was neutral, but I'm pretty sure it's quite the opposite. And a lot of roads lead to Switzerland, first and foremost. Second, none of these people will meet with Obama, Biden, Nuland, Sullivan, Blinken. They're done with them. And I mean, I'm talking Modi, Putin, all of them. They're done with them. But all of them still have the door open to Donald Trump. So no matter what, we have to look at that, because he doesn't want. What they've done to us with the sanctions on Iran is that they have isolated us from the rest of the world. While they were telling us we're going to isolate Russia, it went totally the opposite direction. And I think, frankly, this is by design, because not too long ago, apparently, all of our social security numbers were hacked. And I'm like, oh, really? So what I think they're trying to do, God forbid, if Kamala is placed there, is to basically say, for our protection and to avoid corruption from the BRICS nations, we're going to have to put you on the central bank digital currency, on the digital public infrastructure that runs it, and we're gonna transatlantic watch corruption. We're also going to protect from child trafficking. I mean, whatever they can say, but that is the end. That central bank digital currency is not American. The BRICS nations aren't following that. And as you and I know, because we've discussed Libya before, anytime anyone tried to break up the financial system that goes all the way up to the Bank of International Settlements and the private Western central banks, they die. The country turns into, a powder keg. They have regime change. Well, guess what? People are watching it. They watched what happened in Turkey in real time. Remember when it happened in Kazakhstan, right before the Ukraine war? Watched it in real time. Unfortunately, it tends to be the CIA and their partners in the UK, and National Endowment for Democracy and USAID, two groups that pretend that they go around the world to help nation states protect their democracy, only go around the world to regime change. And we have Samantha Power, one of the most dangerous women to ever hold any position in our country, running the money bags of regime change and color revolutions that she was a part of under Obama. And then we got Susan Rice out there. We have very dangerous people going around the world. Sullivan and Blinken have no respect. Newland is hiding over at the National Endowment for Democracy. But again, this is about when you do the work that we both do, and I follow the money a lot, we're talking about 7,000 people in the United States of America that think that they are controlling 350 million people because we're allowing them to think that. And this goes again to who is the enemy, who is doing this stuff. And again, it is, in my opinion, a public-private partnership above our government that is not only running the controlled demolition and all of that, but don't forget that Biden put in something called the Declaration of North America, which is a long game to remove the borders, which goes back to Kissinger all the way back in the day, talking about how the global governance would work by dividing the world into sectors or sections and ruling above nation states so that the nation state still thinks it's free and that its Constitution and Bill of Rights and everything is still functioning, because above them is a group of people that are actually pulling the strings and buying the politicians and manipulating the markets and crashing and creating the bubbles. And that is where we are. But we can see them, we can identify them, but we have to understand our neighbor is not our enemy. And sadly enough, they hate the Democratic voter way more than they hate us. They want to destroy us because they don't want to deal with us or our ideas or our thoughts or our free thinking. But they abuse the people following them, especially MSNBC, CNN, The View. What they have done to their audience in terms of toxic energy, ugly, abusive hatred, like this propagandizing to the point of gaslighting that people are losing. They're mentally ill. They've created an entire normalcy of walking around with toxic hate for strangers, your neighbors. I mean, they have divided this country. So a lot of Americans Anonymous is also about, the programming. How there are dealers, there are pushers. It is no different than drugs, and the drugs they got us addicted to, because that's how the Aleister Crowley types of the globalist work, is conflict and chaos. As long as we're fighting each other, we won't see them. That's the plan. So even when you're looking at Israel or at Ukraine or at what might happen in Taiwan or all of that, this still benefits the parent company. As long as people are at war, as long as people are doing that, where what you said is what we should have done all along, instead of following PNAC, we should have actually seen what China was doing with the Belt and Road Initiative, and America should have countered it with better infrastructure, better ports, better security, better farm and agricultural development. We could have for $200 billion we gave Ukraine, the entire Africa could be, have water, clean water, electricity, oil and gas. They could have farms and food and plentiful and education, and they could be consumers for the rest of the world. Same thing with South America, same thing with the Middle East. It's the whole fraud of developing nations, the IMF debt slavery model. It's just all plain to see now. But if we have a country that is being manipulated by Hollywood and the media to only think that somehow women's rights are going to be taken away, and they don't know we're losing the dollar primacy, we could be going into World War III, where we have a military that has been decimated by woke nonsense and generals that have the wrong ideas, and we failed to compete with the rest of the world. And then we put 800 military installations around the world where they don't want us. That costs billions of dollars a year to run these installations all over the place, including 350 bioweapons labs in Europe. And we can't even take care of our own country or shut our border. Something is terribly wrong. And it's going to be the American people realizing we're not each other's enemies. We actually are all on the same side. We might not agree on 2 or 3 issues, but we agree on the important things. And that's why I am happy about, Tulsi and RFK Jr. and a lot of the other people, especially some of the Silicon Valley people. But I also believe that there's also a fear of this technocratic, totalitarian track and trace surveillance communism, because you see people saying, like Kamala Harris, we'll take their patents, we'll take their company. You think if they put Donald Trump in jail, if they steal the election, they're not going to put probably Elon Musk in jail and take all his companies? That with what we've seen them do to Trump, it'll be the exact same thing they did to Trump in New York. They'll do it probably to Tucker Carlson and whoever else they can. They've already done it to Alex Jones, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman. I mean, Bannon's in jail leading up to the election. Navarro just got out of jail. These people will stop at nothing to keep power. As long as we, the people, take our power back, they got nothing. But as long as we just watch and wait, and again, if Trump, God willing, wins on November 5th, it's not go time for him, it's go time for us.
Yep. Because we have to ensure that January 20th happens, and then we got to ensure that for the next 4 years that they don't impede with this guy, that they don't take this guy out
either. You and I can't
we
stop
are MAGA.
anyone out there doing this. It's not he wins and success. It's he wins and we get to work saving our country. It's county by county by county in this nation, and getting involved because we have purpose. We are about to lose this country, and if we save it, we better save it as if it's 1776 again. Because, you know, on my show a lot, I read the 27 grievances of the founders. We are in exactly the same place, except for this time, it's a global public-private partnership of oligarchs instead of England. And
it's
again,
1,000 times
money.
Worse.
And the same money, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it's the same power figures. I mean, you were talking about, 100 years ago, what we should have done. And, the power figures that we're talking about right now are the same ones that funded both sides of the war in World War I and World War II. And the thing is they fund both sides of the world because they're controlling the outcome of what happens next. It's a chessboard for them. They're betting on both of the players, and whoever wins, they win, but they're winning the power aspect.
Right.
And, this goes back to a level of psychological warfare, because every fourth turning that we've had within our civilization, the last one being in the 1940s, there's always this massive transference of wealth from the people to these organizations. And right now, you mentioned the Bank of International Settlements. We are in the midst of one right now. And I don't know if you had checked it out, but in the summer of 2023, July 2023, the Bank of International Settlements put out a document called the Unified Framework, talking about the infrastructure of digital currency and how it operates. Now, I've been big into cryptocurrency since 2017. What the Bank of International Settlements put out was privatized versus central bank digital currency, and how both of them will integrate into the framework for the global financial system. And so this is what I was told by a friend of mine who works at the U.S. Department of Treasury. He's a former lead developer at Coinbase, and he develops blockchains. He's been working on it at the U.S. Treasury for a long time, for the last 3 years. One of the things he told me, he says, don't look at that as a good thing. I said, well, why is that? And he said, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock. He goes, go look at what they're doing. And I said, okay. So I started looking. In the Joe Biden's infrastructure bill, when the Green New Deal.
Yeah, that's where a lot of this is. Bill? Right. Yeah, exactly.
There was a provision in there in order for counties across America to accept PPP funds, the COVID funds from the Trump administration. They had to reduce the amount of single-family housing permits from 67 to 27%. Then they had to increase the amount of multifamily permits, swap them around. But the multifamily permits had to accept Section 8 and government-assisted housing. Now, why would they do that? At the same time, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, JP Morgan Chase are out there buying up entire communities that were abandoned construction projects during COVID. They're buying up single family houses all across the country. My buddy goes, look at this. And I said, oh, he goes, what happens if BlackRock comes out with their own digital currency or their own stock exchange? What they're doing in Texas, by the way.
I know, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah. What happens when they come out with their own cryptocurrency? And then they say, hey, we own these neighborhoods right here. And, the interest rate for a mortgage right now is 9.2%. So how about this? We're going to give you a 2% mortgage, but you have to buy our cryptocurrency and then utilize that cryptocurrency to pay your mortgage. But here's the thing is you can use that cryptocurrency at 7-Elevens. You can use it at Walmart's because we own all those companies. Same thing with JP Morgan. They have their own internal privatized cryptocurrency. And so what happens is all of these corporations create their own privatized cryptocurrency that integrates back into the central bank digital currency. And what they're going to do is they're going to offer you reprise from high inflation. They're going to offer you, hey, I'll give you a 3% personal loan if you transfer your paycheck every month into this cryptocurrency. You can still do everything normal, but you're going to get lower rates. You're going to get 15% savings. And then they got you.
Well, yeah, and also those what you're talking about too, the central bank digital currency that the Bank of International Settlements and the World Bank would be running it actually is they're programmable tokens. It's not money. They can turn it on and off. They can take it out. Also, there was also in the IRS bill, everyone was looking at the 87,000 agents. I was looking at the AI in the IRS bill that they want to implement in the IRS. The AI would be basically you take out the middleman. You wouldn't even be doing your own taxes because you would already be on the blockchain that they want to put you on. And this all goes to that digital public infrastructure, which the technology was in that infrastructure bill that you're talking about to make it happen here. It is that digital public infrastructure. And if you look into it and you look through where it's coming from, the Gates Foundation, CCP, World Economic Forum, the World Bank, BIS, it's all part of that. But again, that is also because I firmly believe that Eric Schmidt, who's behind the scenes running the AI and a lot of stuff in the White House, who used to be of Google and Google China, is that I've come to believe that the digital public infrastructure of which they want to put the CBDC and the World Health Organization pass and the climate trace pass and the digital wallet on is exactly what they already have in China. And I do not think it was built for China. I think it was built for us. Because if you trace the companies, you'll see it. And I don't know why there's not a problem with the American people and BlackRock, because frankly, they have their $14 trillion that is mostly came from mostly pension funds and public and private retirement accounts and all of that. Also, they have their own internal AI, Aladdin, that gives all of the stock exchange who to trade and everything. So they're coming from both sides. They're with the traders and the broker dealers. They're with the people and the pensions. But they're also BlackRock's investing in many CCP-linked military industrial complex companies. They're building the EV plants with China in Mexico to compete with us. They are building carbon capture things that aren't even proven to work. And the other big thing about the land that you're talking about, because I just did a show the way I really dug into this, a lot of where they're buying these huge swaths of land so you can only rent and own nothing and be happy, also happen to be where there are huge natural resources of not just oil and gas, but also water, because they need these giant data centers that are like 4 football fields to run the digital public infrastructure. That is one of the reasons that they stopped oil production, and where they are placing these houses and where they're buying farms tends to be very close to big underground natural resources of water and energy because of that. Because that's the goal. If they can get us on the digital public infrastructure, it's a game over.
I just talked about this last night. I'm going to talk about it again here in a little while. Water cycle off balance for first time in human history.
It's because of the digital infrastructure. Yep.
So Mel, I went out many years ago and I bought waterwars.com, H2O wars.com, because I knew it was coming.
You're right.
And a new report by the Global Commission of Economic and Water reveals the global water cycle is in crisis for the first time in human history, with India, China, and Europe set to face consequences. So when I lived in Colorado, I live in Minnesota now. When I lived in Colorado, a good friend of mine at the time worked for the Walton Family Trust. Okay. Yeah. The head of the Walton Family Trust was, by the way, the former chief operating officer at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Shocking. So they all go around from the boards. They
do. So the Walton Family Trust was receiving massive amounts of state and federal grants to save the Colorado River.
Right.
Okay. So they're receiving millions upon millions of dollars in grants to save the Colorado River. But then on the other side, they have a for-profit organization that is taking the water from the Colorado River and selling it to the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia by the plane full. And I'm sitting here going, what the fuck? Like, this is really happening? About 6 months ago, you had an article out there that Mexico City is facing a water crisis, that water wars are coming. And it said the problem is not because of lack of water, but policy.
Yeah. And also the
control
and the capture of natural resources, so that there's no competition either, because it's Microsoft, Google, Amazon and BlackRock are building giant all over this country where you see what you're talking about with the housing, you're going to see right near there, or where they're buying off farms, you're going to see right near there. They're building data centers for digital public infrastructure because it costs a lot of money to run the AI that they want for the fourth industrial revolution, even though we have plenty of things we can do that don't require that. But if you look at the whole picture and really look at Agenda 21 and then Agenda 2030, it is all about the full capture of natural resources, including us, humans and animals and everything. So that's where we are. This parent company thinks they run the world. They've gotten away with it for decades, centuries, some of them, and they're not willing to give it up. And they think that they had the technology finally catch up and they were ready to hit play and going direct to the people and leaving us with this illusion that we have a free country when they're running it from above. And we need to pull back the curtain on those people, and we need to stand against it. And that means decentralizing. It means supporting independent media. It means turning off, no matter how entertaining or whatever else, anything connected to any of this global public-private partnership. People have to go to weforum.org and look around, look at who their partners are, and purposely not do business with them. This is really up to us, and it's really going to be on a local level of awareness and understanding. But again, I really do feel badly for the people that they've driven to full-on mental deterioration and madness with toxic hate and division just to protect themselves. Because frankly, not only is a lot of the media involved, but a lot of intelligence, but CIA, FBI, DHS, all of these people, they're working dual jobs. One of them is, their job, and the other one is spying on us. No American citizen right now is not being spied on. It's completely unacceptable. Other than a driver's license, birth certificate, and a social security card, the government is not entitled to any of your data, any of your information, anything going on in your house. And that they are getting everything, and they're creating dossiers on everyone like we're Chinese. I am telling you, what they have in China that people watch, the social credit score, the track and trace surveillance, the facial recognition, was built for us. Everything in China would not be there if Bush, Clinton, Obama, and Biden did not allow it to happen there. So now the same people that built that same infrastructure that is imprisoned in a digital gulag, the people of China, want to roll it out to the rest of the world. And if you watch a Davos thing, or you learn about the UN, you find out that the Chinese Communist Party is at the very top of both, and that those institutions, the UN and the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization, they like how China runs their society. They want that to be the world model. So we need to stand up now, because Kamala and CCP Waltz, you think they're going to stand in the way and say that's unconstitutional? No, they're not. They're going to give us every reason that we have to protect ourselves from the BRICS nations and lead us to believe that this digital infrastructure and CBDC is the way to do it. And we can never allow that to happen. So we'll just keep standing up and speaking up, but everyone has to start showing up. Showing up is really important.
100%. Have you seen the show on Amazon? It's from a book series by William Gibson called Peripheral. Have you watched Oh my, you need to watch that.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So okay. A24 Studios. Leave the World Behind, Civil War. Okay.
Yeah.
So Leave the World Behind is the prequel to Civil War.
Right.
Okay. And then after Civil War, what happens? This is going to be Peripheral. I'm going to
check it out tonight. Now that you told me, we have something to.
Oh my God! So we've
been prepping by watching Walking Dead, so I should probably watch.
Oh.
Well, Josh, you'll be in my Alexandria. I just told David Rodriguez this morning. I was like, if you're going, I go whatever gulag you're going to. I hope I go to the same one. But if we get out, we're creating the Alexandria together.
Let's do it.
I mean, that's what you have to look at. It's that crazy. I honestly think that there's so many more people on our side than we have any idea. I think we're talking about hundreds of millions of people at this point. With like the Black community realized BLM was a total fraud and a lie, and all that money was laundered back to the politicians and got him into office. Their communities have gotten no better. They got defunded. The police hurt them. They've had it. Real, great American citizens who actually came here the right way through, the port of entry. They're pissed too. They've been working their asses off all these years. And you know what? They're not letting in the engineers, the doctors, the scientists that, we would want here to come contribute to society. They're bringing people that don't even want to be here, but giving them our money and everything. It's so ludicrous. And I know that all of that is the largest human trafficking operation. The cartels are running it. They've always been involved with the Bushes. The Bidens have been involved in South America too. I mean, John McCain, Kerry, are all involved in this. So it's just like the American people have to stand up and say, not anymore, not in our name and not with our money. And if we could just do that and preserve freedom for a little while longer, we can actually rebuild this country better. But we have to stop with allowing them to divide us. It's just not real. If we all lose freedom, we all lose.
I 100% agree. And I like what you said in the beginning when you said, when Donald Trump says they're not after me, they're after you. But the real aspect is they're not after us. They're after the world, but America is just in the way.
Yeah.
And
we should take pride in that. We should be proud that the whole world is begging the American people to stand up and fight back and show up. I am telling you, people all over. And what is happening, honestly, Saudi Arabia was supposed to start with Turkey, as you brought up, and Egypt, war games, like they do. They're putting a lot of things on hold till after November 5th. And just yet at the BRICS conference, Putin mentioned it, and so did Modi, that everyone's kind of waiting to see, including Saudi Arabia, because they're willing to work with Trump. So whether you like him or you hate him, if you want sand in the gears of the takedown of America and thus the entrapment and enslavement of the rest of the world, you need to put Trump in there, because that gives you a chance. When people ask me who I'm voting for, and I say this to others, you better say you're voting for yourself, your family, your future in this country, and freedom worldwide. It's got nothing to do with Trump or Kamala. Right now, we're voting on ideologies and directions, and they could not be more different.
Wow. Damn, you're amazing. You know that?
Ah, stop it already.
We're like equals in this. Like, I'll just let you go.
We got to do this more often. This is like I'm at the end of the day today, but I want to come back on because I would like to do a little deeper of a dive into the water. If you own that Water Wars, it's important because I really found a lot of crazy stuff, and people can do stuff locally. These are local contracts, local deals, no bid contracts. UN World Economic Forum partner front companies in counties all over this country. Their whole goal is to capture the natural resources under your land in your state. So that's a really, I'm glad you're doing that. And I want to participate in that as well.
And I'm a conspiracy theorist, so I think
I love it.
Much, much deeper. I honestly think that this planet is being terraformed. That's my opinion.
Well, you'll have to come on my show and talk on that. My audience will love that idea.
Yeah.
Well, I have to jump off, but I wanted to thank you so much. We finally did it. We're going to have to plan it again upcoming. I want to remind everyone, you can get Americans Anonymous, Restoring Power to the People, one citizen at a time, anywhere books are sold, or at themelkshow.com. Lots of great ideas in there. And always, Josh, we'll continue to do this, do it a lot more coming up, since we're not going to be running around the country as much. We can actually focus more on deep dives like we used to do. So I'm so grateful. I love being on with you, and I love you, and you're a great, great American, and somebody that has just stood in the front lines this whole time, unwilling to back down, and I love every minute of it.
Take care, Mel. Love you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Bye-bye.
Bye. Guys, visit themelkshow.com. The links are in the chats. You can find them there. themelkshow.com, ThemelShow.com. And you can also get her book directly off her website by going to that same website, and right at the top, you'll see Americans Anonymous. So Mel K, just absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you, she's like a human encyclopedia, people. She's just like, she's like me, but female. So, all right. Well, I am waiting for Tammy to join. And once Tammy joins in here, we're going to continue the conversations for a bit longer. We're going to probably go into extended hours tonight. Let me make sure that everything is still good there. Oh, there she is. 1 second. Let me bring Tammy in. Tammy Guthbert Garcia.
Hello.
One amazing woman to another amazing woman.
That was awesome. I heard you guys talking about water. That's freaky, man, because those globalists, they just want to control every single thing we need to live. They want to be the gatekeeper to it. And that's their business model. It's freaky. It's freaky. How's your week going, Josh?
My week has been interesting. So I had my new septic tank put in because I'm not going to go on city sewers.
Yeah.
I had to cut down a big tree. I had to move the big tree. It threw out my back a little bit, but I was smart enough to realize that, like, now I understand what's happening when my back gets thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, I'm herniating a disc, and what a herniated disc actually is, like the gel kind of pops
Yeah.
out. When I realize that that's what's happening, I know what to do. I have to kind of put myself in the traction, take all the force and pressure off that area, and allow it to kind of start going back in before it gets inflamed.
Right.
And I did it this time, and like I'm good and moving, and I'm not down for 2 months, and I'm like, thank God I did that. But I've been just really busy with the yard, getting everything ready for winter. I got
Yeah.
a greenhouse going up probably tomorrow. Got to take care of the leaves. The septic was done today. My
Yeah.
yard's a mess. Oh my God, I lost so much of my yard too. But I'm having fun living life, and I think that that's one
Yeah.
important thing for everybody out there is have fun living life. Then let me see. We got the After Dark Q&A tonight, so that's going to be fun. I think we're gonna do a short one because, guys, this next segment's going to go an hour. So I hope you guys are ready. And if you're on East Coast time, I hope you're ready to stay up. We're about to deep dive into some stuff. So this next segment's going to go for an hour. So we'll probably have a short Q&A tonight because I do have to get up early in the morning for everybody out there. But what I wanted to do is I'm not going to go over much news tonight. That is going to be taken care of tomorrow in my Red Pill Daily News Brief. So all the news from today and tomorrow will be in my Red Pill Daily News Brief. So make sure that you are subscribed to that, people. The best place to go to subscribe for that, obviously, socialredpill.com. And socialredpill.com, you can subscribe there and you'll get all of our daily news briefs. You can also go to our locals right there. And if you're on Rumble, right there, you just click on that locals. And then Substack, one of the best because you get a whole bunch of other content as well on Social Red Pill and Substack. So you get tons of other stuff there when you do that, including Kathy O'Brien, who we were just talking about. A lot of her podcasts and audio podcasts and articles are posted on our Substack, getting that distribution for Kathy. So guys, if you want that news, it's going to be there. But tonight we're talking about important issues. We had Mel K on talking about, well, a lot of what Mel was saying was interesting because it's the same message that Tammy's going to come to us about. And that's community collaboration, community commerce, about to build up our communities. And so we really need to focus on this. And someone said it's ladies' night. Hey, I'm a dude. I'm a dude.
Look at all those Canadians in the chat too. Woo woo! Shout out to all the Canadians on there. They got some shifty stuff going on in their provincial election in British Columbia. Same old crap. So they, all of a sudden we have a tie. And so we have to stop counting. And now it's been days. And guess what? They found 16,000 new votes. They just poof. They found new votes, Josh. It's who's buying any of this?
50,000 votes. So look at this.
just found them. They just came out of nowhere. Oh my gosh. I don't know what we're going to do, people, but this pattern is duplicating now around the world. It's pretty crazy.
Well, 1 second, kiddo. Homework questions. It is crazy, and this world is getting really crazy. And I saw this article we were just talking about with Mel K, and I actually had pulled this article up because I wanted to talk to you about it. I know we want to get into another topic as well, but I want to talk about this first in primary.
Sure.
Water cycle off balance for the first time in human history. A new report by the Global Commission of Economics of Water reveals that the global water cycle is in crisis for the first time in human history, with India, China, and Europe set to face the consequences. Areas with high population and agricultural density are most at risk, with dwindling water storage threatening food production. The report urges a rethinking of water economics, recognizing water as a global common good to avoid looming water disaster. Now, water as a global common good. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, here's really all you need to know about the manufactured water crisis that is going to be coming our way. Bill Gates is invested in you being able to drink your toilet water. He's got a company now that has the ability to take your toilet water and turn it into drinkable water. So anything that Bill Gates has invested in, though, protect it at all costs, because this is his business model. This is what he likes to do. They like to corner the market, and then pretty soon he'll be pushing for regulation so that we can't water our vegetables, so we can't have animals, because now there's water scarcity. On the flip side of that, you've heard probably Elon talk about, we don't have a water shortage. There's no problem with water. We don't have a water problem.
Right.
It's being able, he's like, you're telling me we can do all this great stuff with technology, but we couldn't get salt out of water if we needed to make it drinkable. It's ridiculous. He's just, he's calling it out right away. But if you've watched the patterns of Bill Gates's investments, he keeps bringing up water. He likes to pepper these into his little talks that he gives in the press. Oh, water this, water that. I'm telling you, get a well.
Well, and here's what I foresee them doing. I mean, I had Dean Wigginson on last week.
Yeah.
Talking about geoengineering and weather manipulation.
Chemtrails. Yeah.
And they're going to get to the point to where they're going to taint the water supply on the planet. That fresh water, that underwater or underground springs are going to be unusable. Or at least this is what they're going to tell us, that wells contaminated. They are going to centralize control over clean water, people. I just want you to understand that they're going to centralize control because that is the one resource on this planet that controls almost all, that controls all other resources of life.
Yeah.
Farming, agriculture is all controlled by water. And so they're trying to implement all of these EU restrictions coming down from the World Economic Forum and ESG standardization, right, in the Europe. And this is why the farmers were throwing shit on their government buildings in the Netherlands and stuff like this. Here's the thing, is none of that matters if they control water. If they control water and they restrict the use of those farmers and the water, it's over and done with. And they hand that off to a centralized government organization that only gives access to NGOs and commercial corporations. Well, now those farmers have to pay that money to use that water. And what happens? They'll eventually go out of business. And who will be there to buy them up? The same companies and corporations. And now you have a centralization of all the food on the planet, of all the water on the planet.
Yeah. Well, they're the global resources, Josh. They're global resources. You don't own any of those resources as a country. Those are global. This is the verbiage that they use at the WEF, right? That's the World Economic Forum verbiage. Listen to these talks in Davos. Everything's communal. Everything. This is a global access. Well, let's then talk about, the United Nations 17 Sustainable Goals is all about, dissolving borders and having a global community with global tracking and tracing through digital ID. It's all one big operation. And water's probably a really big, piece of the puzzle here. Because if you can control the food and water, well, you've got control over everybody, because everybody needs that to survive. So
unless you are self-sufficient, unless you have community commerce where within your small town or your medium-sized city or wherever you live, you know the farmers, you know these people, and guess what? They don't have to go out there and sell on that large scale level. They don't need to go in. They can produce directly right there, and they can sell right to the community. And if you get into those situations, by the way, those are what they're going to go after first. That's who they're going to try to shut down first. But if you can get into those situations and you can get an acre, 2 acres of land, 10 acres of land, 20 acres of land, and you can start producing for yourself, people, I'm telling you, this world will be a brilliant and beautiful place for you in the future, because in the future, they are centralizing the power over all freaking resources.
Yeah, this week I had one of our beef providers on, because we build that community at Naturally Inspired. We just had a meeting again last night. We're doing evenings on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. to get community down into the radio station that I broadcast out of. We're meeting. We had about 20 people there. We were talking about solar sheds. We're talking about creating these real solutions for people to connect. Yeah, it's a really interesting. It's like a box that generates power from a solar panel. So it's, the grid goes down. We don't know what's going to happen after the election. These things are a good thing to do, and they're pretty economical too. So anyway, that's the type of stuff we're talking about in our community. And then we have beef providers. We have people that grow stuff. And that's what it's all about. It's about creating these little communities within where you live and stuff, where you can connect to these solutions that you need, and we can come together as a community. Through the depression, through any kind of hardship, this country has survived only through community, which is why they have really made a point of destroying community. It's a global market now. Don't build your brick and mortar, don't build your community, build online, right? It's so much easier. And I think do both. Why can't you do both? But invest in your own community, because that's what you are interacting with on a daily basis. Like, I was walking, doing my workout the other day up the street, and I just thought, man, I'm really grateful that I live in the country, because 4 trucks passed me. I had a conversation with my neighbor. He got a new tractor. Like, that's the kind of, I know them all, and I know what they know how to do. They're all old farmers, generational farmers around us. If we need something, our one neighbor, he's got the water source. The other neighbor's got the heavy equipment. Like, we know that who we can count on. And so many people don't have that anymore. So we're trying to reestablish that within our community, and then teach other people how to do that. That involves, American business too, like these ranchers we've been working with. The regulations are coming down hard on these guys. They're talking about like mandatory RFID chips to be able to transfer their cattle over state lines if they want to take them to auction and sell it, or if they want to take it out of state, which is for processing, because here in Colorado, we've had a real issue with processing. All these processing plants burned down suspiciously. And then, we have to go over state lines to just for the sheer volume. We don't have the people that can process it. So we're talking about getting funding to one of our ranchers so that they can do their own small processing, USDA approved processing facility. But this is the new model. And I tell you, RFK Jr. and some of these people that are championing the food supplies, the reclaiming our food supply and getting the chemicals out of our food supply, they know exactly what's going on. We have been just squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Some farmers have been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed to the point where it's not profitable for them to even farm anymore. Right. And there's no reason for that. I mean, we had Joel Salatin at our health summit this summer. He's a friend of ours. He is all about regenerative farming. His property is absolutely phenomenal in the way that one thing supports the next. It's about polycropping, right? Having bees and having an orchard and having pigs and having cows and having chickens. That's regenerative farming. And the reason why we want to do that is because that is what feeds back to the land. That is building up our soil and feeding our land. Not only that, it's producing a way higher quality of food for us. We're getting minerals and nutrients from the soil. Everything is in place, if you will, because, there's a system to nature. And we were so arrogant. We thought we could just barge our way in there and synthesize nature's system and do feedlots and do, this monocropping and just pump it full of chemicals. And we've gotten to the breaking point now, because the food we're eating is poison. It is literally poison. The chemicals in it and stuff are poison. And our FDA has known it for a long time. Yeah. A very long time. And we aren't safe. We are not safe relying on these regulatory bodies to protect us from products in the marketplace, especially food products. It's been going on for a very long time. And I think we have a huge opportunity here right now where we can switch this thing around, because there's so many people that understand we're in trouble with our food supply. We're in trouble with big pharma. We're in trouble with people like Bill Gates, and we have terrible results right now. But I brought a clip today. Yeah, let's go ahead and cue it up for the clip I wanted to share with your audience today. This is Dr. David Graham, and he was one of the key people in the FDA back in late 90s and early 2000s. And in 2004, He gave a lengthy testimony to Congress and said to them, listen, we are not protected by the FDA. So all of this that we've seen, that we've gone through now with COVID, and it's because they've so-called like pretty much gotten away with COVID. Now we're seeing all these other drugs that are just flying through approval. So let's take a look at that clip. This again is Dr. David Graham, and he's from the FDA.
If you were confronted by this situation, what would your reaction be? What would you want to know, and what would you do about it? And what does history teach us? You can see in the figure that is part of my testimony that in 1938, Congress enacted the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, basically creating the FDA in response to the deaths of about 100 children caused by elixir sulfanilamide. In 1962, Congress enacted the Kefauver-Harris Amendments in response to the thalidomide disaster in Europe, which affected 5,000 to 10,000 infants. Today, in 2004, we are faced with what may be the single greatest drug safety catastrophe in the history of this country. I strongly believe that this should have been, and largely could have been, avoided, but it wasn't. And over 100,000 Americans have paid dearly for this failure. In my opinion, the FDA has let the American people down.
Isn't that crazy? So he's talking about Vioxx at this particular hearing. Vioxx was a drug that was used for arthritis, and it ended up causing heart attacks in many people. It's estimated to have killed between 100 and 130,000 Americans with heart attack. And the FDA knew about it. And if you look back to 1962 and earlier, if there was something that killed 100 kids, they were pulling that thing off of the market. And 5,000 kids in the 60s, and it just keeps getting more and more. So we got in the VAERS system, okay, which is, we know that's about 5% of reporting. The vaccine adverse event system, that accounts for about 5%. That's all that is worth. They have almost 20,000 deaths from COVID vaccines now. Wow. Almost 20,000. So estimate that is only 5% of the deaths that occurred from that. And we still don't have that thing pulled off. Right? That's still being distributed. That's still being injected at the pharmacy down the road from my house.
Well, and Bill Gates just got indicted.
Yes, in the Netherlands. Yes. And Albert Bourla. He is also listed on those people that need to show up to court there. So, slowly but surely, we're seeing more and more stuff. We are seeing we're seeing people in like the celebrity sphere. I was telling someone the other day that I was watching my daughter's favorite show, which is Dancing with the Stars, because she's a dancer. Have to sit through that once in a while with her. And there was this terrible story of a young girl, 29 years old, on there, newly married to one of the other dancers. Catastrophic brain bleed. 29 years old. Collapses on stage, has to have 40% of her skull removed and replaced and reconstructed. It almost killed her. And we see these stories over and over and over again. And now nobody's really paying attention to them right now because of the election, because of the news cycle is all focused over there. How convenient is that? We're seeing now BART, which is the Bay Area Transportation, conglomerate in that area. They are now having to reinstate employees and pay them back pay. New York has had to do that. This is all silently happening, and the reason why is because the FDA is never going to admit that they've made a mistake on any of these drugs because the liability is too big, right? And then they're going to have to stand for that. They're going to have to, be tried for that or whatever. But the point is that this has been going on, like they've gotten away with it for decades, Josh. Decades. And because COVID wasn't called out, and it's not going to be, we're now seeing, I wanted to bring this up, we're having excess mortality in Alzheimer's patients with monoclonal antibodies. So they developed these two new treatments for Alzheimer's, which is their monoclonal antibodies. And they're killing people 3- and 4-fold compared to the group that did not take them. And this stuff is not getting pulled off. It's like we are in the wild, wild west when it comes to drugs in this country, and the FDA it's nothing. Like RFK is going to come in. He knows who to get out of those agencies, but we're talking about cleaning layers and layers and layers of corruption for decades. That's what needs to happen. So I think he's highly
burn it all down.
Yes.
Fucking burn it all down.
And get out of the WHO, because the WHO and the CDC and the FDA, all they do is, point fingers at one another. Oh, we're just following CDC guidelines. Oh, we're just following FDA guidelines. The user fee at the FDA, you can pay to expedite your drugs application approval. It's called a user fee. You just pay a fee. And then if you don't hear anything back from them over a certain amount of time, then your drug's been approved. This is the ultimate dodging of liability, right? Because we didn't tell you anything about your drug and that time elapsed, that means you've got the green light. Like, this is so shady. I can't even like, it's only because the American public doesn't know how it works. Yeah. That's the only reason that anybody has any trust in them.
There's another reason. The first reason is, number one, is they don't know how the system works. Number two, and Mel K was just hitting on this, is that people are so engrossed within the propaganda, within the disinformation, within the psychological warfare, that is what. So it goes to George Orwell's 1984, right? It's I don't want to say it's doublespeak, but it's what is the word I'm looking for? It's where you believe the lies simply because all the lies are all you've been told, right?
Right.
They believe the deception because it's coming from the people that have always given them the deception, and always they're still alive, so they must be right. These people are under severe levels of psychological warfare, and the reason why there's nothing being done is because they're still asleep, and they're asleep until it affects them. And I think that we have a health epidemic in this country, and it needs to be taken care of. And I hope that when RFK Jr. and Trump do get in the office, that it does. I just saw this report today, and I tagged it because I wanted to bring it up here.
Yeah.
Birth rate has plummeted. We have a baby crisis. It's below the replacement rate. So
miscarriages.
Right. And we know where these miscarriages are coming from, but I want to point this out here because this is something that I just learned recently. The birth rate is plummeting due to mitochondrial dysfunction. The largest grouping of mitochondria in the human body is in the sperm and the egg. Your mitochondria are coming from your father and from your mother. The mitochondrial dysfunction comes about for several reasons, but most importantly, all of those reasons lead to inflammation within the body, which inhibits metabolism and energy production. And so when you have low efficiency mitochondria within the body because of the severe inflammation, because of the standard American diet, that is producing low efficient mitochondria in the sperm and the egg. And guess what? You cannot reproduce anymore because mitochondria play a very, very large function in that process. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, like it makes sense now why America has a low birth rate and why there's so many miscarriages and all this stuff. It's not necessarily the vaccines. It's not necessarily this or that.
It's metabolic disease.
It's metabolic disease. 100%.
Absolutely. So I covered this today on my shows, 18 different, they call them alternative. To me, I don't like the term alternative because it's not alternative. Rockefeller medicine labeled anything that wasn't petrochemicals alternative medicine. It isn't alternative medicine. It is the original medicine. Plants and herbs and all of that stuff, homeopathy was the original medicine. So there's 18 different modalities now that they're looking at because of COVID. And I guess this is the silver lining, is because of COVID, people's brains have opened up and looked at the medical model from a different viewpoint. And that's allowed us to start exploring, and allowed physicians to start exploring these modalities, because they have the credibility, even though, even though a lot of doctors and medical professionals let us down, people still turn to them for authority, for validation. So it's really exciting to see a lot of medical doctors breaking out of the medical model and starting to use some of these modalities in their practice. So 18 different things that they accredit to helping with cancer. We need a bigger discussion about this. We can't suppress this anymore. This is ridiculous. Cancer awareness. It's always about awareness. Would you like to donate for cancer awareness?
Well,
we have enough bloody awareness. We need a cure. We need to understand where it's coming from.
The American Cancer Society.
Exactly.
They've been around for close to 100 years, received millions upon millions of dollars in donations and grants each year. And what have they done? They produce a standardization to the treatment of cancer that goes in the policy. What the fuck?
And listen to the vocabulary. They're not even trying to hide it from you. We were just at a coffee shop the other day, Jason and I, and the girl says, "Would you like to donate for cancer awareness?" It's not about a cure anymore. They're telling you it's about awareness.
That's marketing.
Yeah. Is there anybody that's not aware of cancer? I don't think so. I think it's impacted all of us in our lives at some point. And we are in a crisis because this type 3 diabetes is what they're calling it. I want to get back to Alzheimer's because this is really important.
Okay.
People don't understand that these are all metabolic diseases, and they express differently in the body because of our individual genetics. So it's not that you are doomed by your genetics, okay? You are not doomed by your genetics. Everyone has what they call SNPs, SNPs. When you look at your genetics, these little SNPs come out, and it shows you, oh, these ones are a little down-regulated. These ones are really high. They're up-regulated. And this maybe you could use, so you can eat to suit your genetics. So if you know that you have, if you say, oh, you have, a SNP in this particular set of your genes, well, say you can eat to upregulate that. So a lot of people that have that, lower, I don't believe in the whole genetic link to breast cancer. But if you did have a lower genes in that area, you could eat more button mushrooms, and that will upregulate those genes. The food will upregulate those genes. And so it's not like you can't do anything about your genes. This stuff is what people need to understand, that you can change your expression of your genes with epigenetics. And it primarily comes from metabolic health. So if you are having dysfunction in your metabolic health, it's going to express in some way. It's going to express in that way based on the genetic SNPs that you have. So we're seeing an explosion in Alzheimer's. I think one of the reasons we're seeing an explosion in Alzheimer's is because of the fact of the 80s and the late 70s, when they told everybody to stop eating saturated fats. They said fat-free. Your brain needs fat. Hear me loud and clear, ladies. You need fat. You have to have it in your diet. It is one of the reasons why we tend to overeat and eat empty calories, is because we're not getting enough fat. We're not getting enough protein. We don't ever feel satiated. So you can overeat on a bag of chips and all of these things, because that's not your natural GLP-1 hormone is not being fulfilled, and you're not feeling satiated when you eat. So not only is that happening with, excess weight gain because of that, but we're getting dysfunction in the mitochondria as well because of the chemicals in the processed food. So that's leading to this epidemic of Alzheimer's. And this is Max Lagavere, I think it is Lagavere. He wrote a book called Genius Foods, and he has a very personal story through Alzheimer's. He's a health journalist. He's a journalist, so he studied this stuff in and out, and then he has this additional experience with his own mother. He says flat out, there are no Alzheimer's drugs that work. None. Because every single one of them is based on the assumed knowledge that Alzheimer's is from plaque in the brain. It's caused from plaque.
Yeah, amyloid plaque that forms in the myelin structures in the brain.
That's right. So there's two, what a lot of people don't know is there's two camps. in this research, in Alzheimer's research. There's the people who assume that it is the amyloid plaque, and they study furiously on products on how to get rid of the amyloid plaque. And then there's a whole nother camp that talks about it being a metabolic, it's diabetes of the brain. It's actually metabolic health that's causing it. So these two fight furiously. It's cutthroat.
And it's not, and so diabetes of the brain. So it's not a sugar saturation. Well, it kind of is, but it's also that the brain is not getting the proper nutrition from the fat that's in the diet.
It's again, I always go back to Chinese medicine, because Chinese medicine is so clearly, it's such a clear example. If you get acupuncture, they put in certain meridians, they put the needles in because they want the body's energy to flow through the body again. Any dysfunction in your cells in Chinese medicine is coming from what I call congestion. So this is another way. I said this on my show today, and I think it's a good visual. If you're dumping in toxicity and toxic foods all the time, your cells are getting gummed up. It's kind of like a pond without an aerator,
right?
Without a pump in it, right? It just sits. It gets really, dark and green and sludgy. That's what happens to our cells when they're not firing properly. And these processed foods with all of the chemicals and everything that we're putting in, and the amount of the additives and everything that we're taking in, and the lack of nutrition, because our food is, because of the way we're farming, our food is nutritionally bankrupt. So if you're not supplementing, I would love to go along with that whole medical doctor thing that says, oh, supplements just give you expensive urine. But that is the most asinine statement I have ever heard in my life. Our food is not what it used to be. Right. It just isn't. We aren't farming the same way. We aren't raising cattle the same way. They're not eating like they used to, unless people are being really mindful about it to be regenerative. That's why it's so important to know the source of your beef, the source of your food, because it's all contributing to the dysfunction of the mitochondria. And that's expressing in all of these diseases. So the things that he found, and that many people have found now, that are the best when it comes to this issue of early dementia, Alzheimer's, number one thing is being able to clean up the diet, whole food diet. That he saw the best improvement between a whole food diet with his mother and exercise. There was no comparison, he said, compared to all the medications they tried with her. Those were the only two things that he could 100% correlate that made an impact.
It's not fad diets.
No.
I mean, so I kind of want to put this out there, because I think that this is where we kind of, as human beings, Americans, we get sidetracked. When we talk about whole food diets, we got keto, carnivore, we got, Atkins, we got the Mediterranean diet, we got all these different diets. All of them are based upon whole food diets. But when you delve into them, you will find out that there's all these other supplemented products that you can buy that make this taste good, or do this, or do that. And this is where you need to be weary, people, because if you're a vegan and you have to buy something that is made out of soy because it's cheese, that's not whole food. It's processed. Anything that's even minimally processed. And I think that what you're saying is whole food diet strictly means real food. And even better if you can localize that food and seasonalize that food.
Yes. And I'm not one to, I'm big on heavy protein, but I am not big on no plants and no, anything that, the closest that you can get to the ground. If potato grows in the ground and you pull it out, you clean it off, you eat it, and you've grown it in good soil, that's full of nutrients. Yeah. That's full of nutrients. And there's nothing wrong with that. Fruit, you want to go organic, of course. I'm talking about foods that don't have labels mostly. That's a great way to look at it. That doesn't have a label, because you look at it, you know what it is. It doesn't need a label. And we have to get back to that, especially if we're in a healing phase. So if we're having dysfunction, things like heartburn, things like GERD, these are all signals. I want to urge people that if you have these things going on, this is a whisper. This is your body whispering to you, hey, something's going on here. We're not operating at the best capacity here. Listen, because all of those things, and personally, when I look back now, I wish I didn't know when my mom passed away from cancer back in 2009. I didn't know a quarter of what I know now. But I wish I had, because she had all the whispers. She had gastric or reflux. She had reflux. She was on medication for that reflux, Prilosec or one of them. She was on one of those. She had arthritis. She was diagnosed with arthritis. She had psoriasis. She had all of these things years before, leading up to her diagnosis. And we were just told, oh, these things are normal as you age. No, they aren't. No, they aren't.
This is all gastrointestinal inflammation is the production of this.
All of it, right? Psoriasis is coming from your gut.
Yep.
That is a gut issue. Any skin issue that you have is a gut issue. So because the chemicals and the processed foods that we eat, and then there's also another little critter called parasites, which can also disrupt things in your microgut biome and express themselves in your skin and whatnot. Bottom line is they all cause these little perforations in our stomach, and our stomach is supposed to be completely sealed off, right? It's not supposed to have little perforations in it. When it has little tiny micro perforations in it, it causes inflammation into the bloodstream. And then that causes the dysfunction at a cellular level. So what we have to focus on is, one, cleaning up the diet. And I know I come on here all the time and I say this because, it takes 7 times for you to hear something for it to really resonate with you and understand that you have to take action. So it's only because I want everybody to feel good. I don't want anybody to fall prey to this pharmaceutical model that really just leads you down the path to polypharmacy, because it doesn't cure your problem. It creates other problems, and then you've got to take another medication for that. You're never getting down to the root cause. And if you look at it from a very basic level, everyone is dealing with issues that come from dysfunction. And they're coming from what you're eating and how you're living. So it's coming from chemical exposure, makeup, toiletries, laundry detergent, all that stuff, that is all absorbed through your skin. And that all goes into your metabolic health. So getting rid of that, number one. And the second thing that you can do is collagen. This is the most undervalued supplement on the market. We all lose 1% of collagen a year after the age of 21. And when you lose that collagen, guess what happens? Collagen is like it's the fascia that runs throughout our body, but it's also the lining of our stomach. It's also the lining of our heart. It protects organs. That's all collagen. Most people, they see collagen and they think, oh, that's for your skin. That's for ladies' skin or hair or nails or whatever. And it's not. And so that's something that you have to supplement, especially, if you're not eating a lot of fats and whatnot. You get crispy. Your tendons get crispy, your cartilage gets crispy. You ever hear about, old Aunt Marge who fell down, broke a hip? And then it's just a downward spiral from there. It's because she doesn't have the foundation to recover from that. There's no collagen production there.
Well, and then her bones have been leached to the calcium because of the fluoride in the water and the fluoride in the toothpaste and
the constant exposure. Yeah. Yep. I mean, when our kids fall, when they're little, they bounce.
Yep.
They just bounce and they get right back up and nothing's wrong. That's because they have collagen production. So it's so important to make sure, don't let anybody tell you that supplementation is, expensive urine. We have to clean up this food supply first and foremost, that you can't get results in your health if you keep putting the toxin in. You know, that's why a lot of people are really big on detox. And I'm big on detox too. I take carbon 60 for detox. Greska's carbon 60. I love it because it's a everyday quick thing that I can do. And it protects me from all of the toxins in the air. It's wonderful. And that's a simple thing. But if you really want to detox, stop putting it in. Stop putting it in, people.
Put down the cookies, stupid.
Make your own cookies. You know, I'm not talking about deprivation here. Everyone can enjoy life. It doesn't have to be painful. But imagine being able to run over to your local farm, a beautiful local farm that's lush and green. See the cows in the pasture that you can buy from the shop straight there. Pick up some produce and you know exactly where your food's coming. You're pouring into your own economy. You're supporting an American family doing a purposeful living, creating food for their community. Your government tells you, oh, that's not sustainable. You can't feed the world that way. Bullshit.
Well, hold
on.
But here's the thing. I don't want to feed the fucking world. The
Yes.
world can figure it out on their own. We're figuring it out here for us.
Exactly.
And if everybody did that, oh, wow. What a novel idea.
Exactly. Dean, I just had Dean Lurwick on my show from Pumpkin Creek Ranch. He's our community partner. He runs cattle on the line of Nebraska and Colorado. He's awesome family, 140 years in cattle ranch. He said the same thing. I'm not concerned about feeding the world. I'm concerned about feeding my community. And if you really take a look at it, these places, you know, like Africa and whatnot, it's not because they don't have the resources to farm. It's because of government has ruined their resources or their accessibility to resources, or war has ruined their resources. So they can't farm. But if we're the leaders in America and we can start doing this and living off of this and being a model for the rest of the world, then people are going to wake up and be like, oh, this is the way we need to do it. Why do we want a centralized food system if we're so worried about biosecurity and food security? Why do we want all our food coming from 80% of the same companies?
Well,
that just happen to be propped up by BlackRock.
But it's a mechanism of profit, and that mechanism of profit is a mechanism of actually of stealing wealth. And think about this. I mean, in Minnesota, you're eating beef that is from Chile. Like,
yes,
what? So. And how did that come about? Because the beef farmers were approached a long time ago by some investors and said, hey, I can get you more beef. I can get you more cattle. And when you produce more cattle, you're going to make more money. And when you make more money, now you can have a bigger farm. Then you can produce more. And then one day you can retire. It reminds me of this story. And I want to read this story for you. It's really short. But this is the story of the Mexican fisherman. And I think that this is important to understand the difference between the two worlds we're talking about. Number one, why we got to this point in our world where we're feeding the world. And number two, what we really need to do. This is the story that started with be more with less. So an American investment banker was at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican on the quality of fish and asked how long it took to catch them. The Mexican replied, only a little while. The American then asked, why didn't you stay out longer and catch more fish? The Mexican said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, but what do you do with the rest of your time? The Mexican fisherman said, I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take siestas with my wife, Maria, stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life. The American scoffed, I'm a Harvard MBA and I could help you. You should spend more time fishing and with the proceeds buy a bigger boat. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you would have a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to the middleman, you would sell directly to the processor, eventually open up your own cannery. You would control the product, processing, and distribution. You would need to leave this small coastal fishing village and move to Mexico City, then LA, and eventually New York City, where you will run your expanding enterprise. The Mexican fisherman asked, but how long will this take? The American said 15 to 20 years. But what then? Asked the Mexican. The American laughed and said, well, that's the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO. You'll sell your company stock to the public, become really rich, and make millions. Millions. Then what? Asked the Mexican. The American said, then you would retire. Move to a small coastal fishing village where you'd sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siestas with your wife, stroll to the village in the evenings where you'd sip wine and play guitar with your amigos. But that's the idea, right? Is that a lot of these farmers in this world, they were sold on the idea by the Harvard MBA.
Yes.
And that centralized everything. We need to get back to, let's just produce a little bit more than enough for the community.
Yes.
And let's sip drink every night and play guitar.
Yeah, and still earn a great living. I think it's possible to earn a great living because you're not having to go through all the regulatory bullshit, right? I mean, if we can get the regulatory stuff taken care of. I just saw in the comments about the GMO corn in Mexico. Yeah, Mexico is not accepting GMO corn anymore. They don't want any GMOs at all. So this is what happened. I was on a call with Robert Kennedy Jr. and Will Harris and a bunch of other people in the farming community, regenerative farming space. And these farmers were saying, listen, we have small farmers that can totally fill this need for Mexico. So we don't have to lose the trade agreement on it, right? Because they don't want to take GMO corn anymore. And our government said, no. Our government said, no, you can't do that. Like,
what?
It's just asinine. Yes, it's asinine because they don't want big ag to lose out on it. They're trying to push back to get Mexico to take the GMO corn. Like
we're trying to preserve the profit.
Yes. It's disgusting. And it only happens because, we don't understand how the whole thing's working. We're so knee deep in corruption in every space, in the health space, in the agriculture space, in the financial space. Like, we got a lot of work to do. I just pray that Trump gets in, that Bobby Kennedy's able to execute what he says he can execute on, because it'll be a totally different world. It really will. I really think that, we can turn it around.
So for everybody asking, this is what I recommend you do. If you guys are interested in a lot of things that Tammy's talking about, text her right there, 720-303-8868. And yes, she reads them all. And I
do.
Responds.
It takes me a little bit, but I love hearing from you guys. This community is one of my favorite communities to be connected to. It really is, because we have some really awesome conversations in the text. So yeah, 720-303-8868. I can connect you to great source for collagen. I connect you great source for all of American business, because that's what I am so passionate about. When we connect people to real solutions for health through American business, this whole model changes. Yeah. It sends a huge message to these conglomerates that, hey, we don't want your crap anymore. We're doing things differently. And it's just as convenient. My farmers deliver right to your house.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to do it in your area. I'm certain they
One thing though is certain states, like I think you were just talking about, that have provisions where the beef, the cows in that state can only sustained throughout the winter with corn feed. And that is typically only GMO corn feed.
Of course.
That's a big problem in Colorado, by the way, is that throughout the winter, the state mandates that they have to use a specific corn feed, and it's a GMO corn feed. And the only way to sustain those cows throughout the winter is with GMO corn. So keep that in mind for everybody out there when you're buying cows in the whole. I've been looking out here. I'm for next year, $3,600 a cow. Thinking I'm probably going to pull the trigger because who knows what's going to happen next year.
We have cows, and the people we work with, Pumpkin Creek, they run their cows right in Nebraska. It's like kind of on the line there. So they have no GMOs. They don't use mRNA vaccines. They're completely aligned with all of, I know this community.
Nice.
It's same with us. Yeah. Yeah. You have to be so careful about where you buy now, because you just don't know. And to think that the FDA, just to come full circle, think that the FDA has your best interest in mind. How many times do they need to let you down? before you
Right.
realize you cannot operate on their assumed knowledge that they're spreading out, because that's what it is. It's just assumed knowledge. It's not true.
Oh my God. Well, and I'm hoping that after November 5th, things start to change. That when Bobby gets in there and when Donald Trump gets in there, that we can start seeing some real change, and not only real change, but and I hate that I don't like the word, but retribution. I think that these people need to be criminally charged. And
100%.
they be held responsible, and that we need to go in there and do exactly that. And then we need to heal as a nation.
Yes, absolutely. I think farming is a great way to do that. I feel like it's a place where we can unite. Everybody wants clean food, and there's so many creative ways that we could bring farming back into our communities. One thing that comes to mind is addictions recovery. Farming is a great way to connect back to nature. We have a drug epidemic. We have this massive drug epidemic. What about funneling money back into our country to build farms in communities, and we turn them into productive addictions recovery facilities?
Jeez.
This is just one idea. Like, I can come up with 50.
You imagine what would happen if we took just the money our government spent this year on homing and housing and clothing and feeding illegal immigrants. If we took the money that they sent over to Israel, they sent over to Ukraine, that they sent over as foreign aid to all these other countries. If you just took all of that money right there and invested it in the infrastructure of the United States of America on sustainable infrastructure, regenerative infrastructure.
I know, right? I try to get excited about the thought of that. I try to keep, and I've been accused of being idealistic and, having a dream and all that stuff. But why not? Like, what else are we going to do? What else are we going to do? If we're not going to shoot for exactly what we want, we're not going to get exactly what we want. You keep shooting for these, well, maybe we could do this, or maybe we could do that. They're not real solutions. I mean, we got to dream again, because we've been so abused by our government that we think, oh, that's not possible. No, actually it is. If we get all these assholes out of the way, it is possible. And we actually have an opportunity to do that right now, because the public is more aware of what's going on in the health space, in the food space, than ever before. We've never been here before, where people have this level of distrust. So now's the time. Now's the time. I think we can really make a major impact.
And here's the beauty, is it doesn't matter if Donald Trump wins or loses. It's still the time.
It's true.
And that we can still have the same major impact, because I think that in 1 year's time, the country is going to be in the same cultural and societal state that is going to come about either way. And what I mean by that is, whether Donald wins or whether Kamala wins, in 1 year's time, our country is going to be in the exact same place. And that's unfortunate, but that is what needs to happen in order for all of this stuff to be undone and for all of these people to be held accountable. So, buckle up, people. And like we've been telling you, get active in the community.
Yes.
Have a plan, sustainable, regenerative agriculture. Start growing a garden in your house if you can. If you get a small little greenhouse on your balcony or your porch, put the grill away for winter.
Yep.
Yeah. Like grow your own food and find community resources where you can grow your own food. Tammy, do you have anything big coming up? Anything going on?
Well, we've got I do my show Monday through Friday, 2 hours from 3 to 5 Mountain Time. You can connect to it, listen live at naturallyinspiredradio.com, or you can listen later on any of the podcast platforms. I got a lot of things coming. We got some group coaching coming up that I'm really excited about, because I know a lot of people like to, they need a little support, but they don't necessarily need the individual support. So I'm putting together these little micro groups that'll be, a little more accessible with not as much of a commitment financially and time-wise. But everybody needs support on this journey. If you're not used to living a lifestyle that produces the results you want, that means you have to change. And everybody needs a little community with that. I tell you, it makes all the difference in the world, just having that engagement. So look for that. It's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll be talking a lot about those groups and getting people into them. When you become a customer of mine with the collagen, you get free group coaching as well. So that's a free call the first Tuesday of every month. I do for all of my collagen customers, and it's 30 minutes, but it's just that little extra Q&A, and accessibility, again, about community for a common goal of optimum health. So just text me
Awesome.
720-303-8868, and let's connect.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate it. Guys, I'm not going to do the Q&A tonight. I'm exhausted. I've like 2 hours show for me. No, 2 hour show for me is just a lot, I guess, these days. I used to do 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night, but I do have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So everybody out there, no Q&A tonight. We'll be taking that off on tomorrow night after Fringe. And so maybe I'll get your husband in for Fringe one of these nights.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, we should. Man,
He's crazy. You think I'm crazy?
Yeah, he's got conspiracy theories up the yin yang. But all right, guys. Much love, respect. God bless. Take care. Have a great night. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks.
Spoon, that's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.